Let's talk about David Pakman, Matt. I mean, top line, I will just say this: it's David Pakman has always been a figure who's annoyed the hell out of me, particularly because of his international coverage. But also, this is somebody who sees their role on the left to sort of wrangle up the crazies. And when he uses the word crazy or revolutionary left, he's talking about socialists, people who believe that capitalism is a fundamental problem, people who want to have a direct conflict with the capitalist class, and people who believe in the radical idea that working people should be able to control their lives. Happy to go to the mat, defend all of those principles. What somebody like this wants is they want a kind of a junior partner of the Democratic Party, for example, people who are a little rambunctious and they'll criticize Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden sometimes, but within the same field of play, on the same team. Um, and it's condemning left politics, progressive ideas, right? And again, I'm a socialist, so I advocate for things further than that. But it condemns that kind of politics to a coalition of upper middle class, college educated people who don't really want to go to the mat and fight for working people, who aren't really ready for the kind of ruptures. And in moments like what we're seeing here on with Gaza and Palestine, are willing to sort of sit back and watch mass murder happen. And they'll say, "Oh my God, I'm sad about it," right? But also all the fundamental conditions and the context, another word they love to use, the context that creates these kind of brutal episodes. I don't really want to do very much about that. I'll say, "Oh, I don't think that they should have settlements in the West Bank," right? And I don't like Netanyahu. But are you willing to take this thing on? No. So let's get into it. We have some clips here. Let's start with this first one, Matt, which is Steve Schmidt. Could you remind people who that is if they're not familiar?
Oh yeah. So Steve Smith, I believe he was a McCain guy, became a never Trumper. Let me just look up, make sure I got his bio. He's a big time sort of politico. George W. Bush. Yeah, he was John McCain on John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign. Also Schwarzenegger, and he became a never Trumper essentially.
Mhm. So Pac-Man was rubbing elbows, and you can watch the rest of that interview if you want to, for some nuggets. But we're going to sort of hold it to Israel Palestine here. And again, like this is a critical moment in American political history and certainly in global politics, right? And anyone who does what we do for a living, I think you can really overstate the influence, particularly like left media or just independent media in general, has on these kind of things. But I don't know. In a couple of years, you should be able to look back and say, I'm really happy that we're able to sort of put forward these ideas, listen to these kind of voices, put these arguments forward. And there's something sort of despicable about Pacman's role and interventions in this entire crisis, which we will get into with all these clips, which is there's been a lot of finger wagging at the left for supporting Palestinian human dignity. And he's going to do that here. So let's play this bait from a right winger and see how Pacman deals with it.
How do you think about, which I think needs to be confronted, is the baseline of immorality that there's some group dynamic, some thread across these universities that are very specific in character, where there's some sort of significant explosion of dogma grounded in anti-Semitism after unfathomable violence. They're out cheering it. I mean, can you imagine if there was a pro-ISIS rally like 5 years ago? And I just, help me figure out what that is. And as a progressive,
Yeah.
So just really fast subtitles here for people because it's like a long-winded question here from Schmidt. What he's saying here is that there's some kind of conspiracy within the universities, right? So classic right-wing psycho guy trope. Again, and then saying that people who are out there saying, "Hey, I don't think Gazans should be bombed in their homes. I don't think
Mhm.
we should be doing mass starvation programs against the Palestinians in Gaza." That's somehow anti-Semitic. So let's just be really clear about what this framing is.
Jews in the US, you have to fight to explain to people that it's a historically marginalized minority group because of many of the tropes about conspiracies to control banking in Hollywood and the sort of stuff that's become part of the narrative. And you're kind of pushing a boulder up a hill. You're swimming against the current. We saw this with the Women's March, where there was a resistance to having Jewish women on the board because they weren't marginalized enough. They were privileged in modern America, 2020, 2017, or whatever year it was. So I think it's a combination of lack of information, lack of historical knowledge, as you point out, and some successful movements that have worked along these lines to convince people.
So, and if you watch the rest of the, sorry, if you had anything top line, I just want to fill in some gaps here.
Yeah, you go first now.
I just want to say, just to be really clear here. First of all, this is something shared by Pakman, who generously clipped a bunch of his stuff that we'll be using. We went and watched all these interviews. If you watch the rest of the interview, the entirety of this conversation on Gaza doesn't get into really what's going on with Palestinians. In fact, David starts talking about a family member who goes to college in the U.S., and he's sort of frustrated that Arab American organizations are getting money from the university while Hillel is not. And let's also not forget here, this guy, Schmidt, is saying these pro-Palestinian demonstrations and solidarity that we've been seeing in this country are anti-Semitic. And instead of even taking what he says on his own program, all these things that he cares immensely about, all these things, he just says, yes, this is exactly what's going on. We're seeing anti-Semitism here by people saying that again, they don't want people in Gaza to be slaughtered.
Yeah, I mean, and it's again like none of these folks can really contend with adults, and so they invent these campus activist sort of like foils to shadow box, because the idea of Israel as settler colonial does not come from just enthusiastic freshmen. Ilan Pappy, who we had on Majority Report, who was in the IDF, and then it was a historian in the 80s, seeing some of the documents, Israel and what they did with regards to the cleansing of Palestine. Pakman should deal with people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Have people like that on your show, David. Don't just deal with because this is just what Chris Rufo does. This is just what Steven Crowder does. But he has a better position on healthcare, I guess. But like this is cowardice.
Mm-hmm.
Have somebody on. I just saw Brian Butler, who used to be at Crooked Media, who's now doing his own thing, did an article about Joe Biden is not supporting genocide. And how do you know Joe Biden's not supporting genocide? Because Israel isn't doing a genocide. Nothing to support that second claim that Israel's not doing a genocide, except to say that, oh, it's just activists who are accelerationists that are saying that. No, bro, it is literally like Jewish Currents has a genocide expert in and contend with them. But no, all of these people want to, and I'm getting a little bit frustrated. All these people want to rather shadowbox the college freshman that they think said from the river to the sea. Like, deal with the adults that are confronting reality here. It's appalling.
Well, he does something that the right does too. I think you're right to talk about the college student thing, but in all of his stuff, it's like, oh, these online leftists, right? Which is another kind of way of like not actually dealing with any of these arguments. It's dismissive, right? But two, it's a very classic right-wing move here, which is my enemy is sort of stupid and weak and unorganized and also extremely powerful at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
Which is pretty damaging. And like, let's just be explicit here. I think most people listening to this program know it. But yes, criticism of Israel, a nation state, is not anti-Semitism. And in fact, doing this game of conflating Israel, a state, a nation, with Jewish people as a whole is anti-Semitic in the first place. And it also does something extremely nasty to Jewish people all across the globe by saying that, oh yeah, Jewish people support Israel, particularly in this country when the significant role in the anti-apartheid movement has been Jewish Americans who say this will not be done in my name. And yeah, so playing into this game, and this is he does it all the time in his segments. He flips to talk about anti-Semitism. It's not unique to him. A lot of people do it. It's crap. It's lazy. It's stupid.
To provide his audience who is being impoverished from the actual details. So I get a lot of this as majority report. Like, how can Poppy say that Israel is settler colonial when there were Jews on that land years ago? Well, this is just from Al Jazeera. So what makes a settler colony a settler colony? The answer to this question cannot be reduced to specific characteristics, but must be instead be sought in a general principle. Simply put, all settler colonies constitute a continuous process of land annexation whereby native inhabitants are removed and settlers from elsewhere are brought in to occupy the land. That is just a fact of what happened with Israel and Palestine. That you can see the immigration flows. You can see the way that demographies were mapped in. Like, this is just factual history. Look, again, it's not just the college freshman, or whoever, the online leftist who's just tweeting behind this is real history, and Pakman should deal with it if he wants to keep making these claims. Because like to go against something like this is apartheid or something like that requires more than just vibes.